Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining us this evening. If you would please rise and join us for the invocation of pledge.
Let us pray. We thank you for our city and especially for tomorrow and the fact that we're a democracy and we have the chance to vote and vote for the things that are important to us. And my prayer is that everyone will always take advantage of that opportunity. And it just bothers me when people don't. But I do hope everybody here tonight will do that. I also ask for your leadership and your guidance as we discuss the various topics tonight. I ask these things in your name. Amen.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Call the meeting to order. Madam Clerk, will you get a roll call, please?
Councilmember Buck.
Here.
Councilmember Doherty.
Here.
Councilmember Hoffman. Here. Councilmember Thomason.
Here.
Councilmember Lowell.
Here.
Councilmember Wilson. Here. Mayor Latham.
Here. And item 200, please.
I make a motion that we approve the minutes of the council briefing held on October 15, 2018.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion from the council? Seeing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? By your action, motion carries. 201.
I make a motion that we approve the minutes of the regular council meeting held October 15, 2018.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion from the council? Seeing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? By your action, motion carries. 202.
I make a motion that we approve the minutes of the special council meeting held October 17, 2018.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion from the council? Seeing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? By your action, motion carries. 203, please.
I make a motion that we approve the minutes of the special council meeting held October 18, 2018.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion from the council? Seeing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? By your action, motion carries. 204.
I make a motion that we approve the minutes of the special council meeting held October 26, 2018.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion from the council? Seeing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? By your action, motion carries. Announcements. We're going to start with how many of Ms. Phillips' students are here? 1, 2. Okay, come on up to the podium. You're going to have to earn that credit point. And when you come up, tell us your name, what grade you're in, and anything else that comes to mind.
Avery McAllister, grade 7.
Mackenzie Hunt, 7th.
Okay, Mackenzie and Ava, nice to meet you. Thanks for being here. Appreciate it. You need your first public speaking credit. Okay, courtesy of the floor, we have several cards. I need to look through this real quick to make sure we're going to start with non-agenda items. What? Oh, you go ahead.
Okay, special opening of our golf courses this Friday and Saturday, so we're excited about that, and so come out and see our golf course. Yeah, the driving range, I think, opens Wednesday. Is there someone? So
The driving range opens tomorrow.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now we're going to move forward to courtesy of the floor visitors, and we'll start with Curtis Loftus. Curtis, if you come forward, give us your name and address, you'll have 3 minutes, sir.
Hello, Curtis Loftus. I'm going to give you the business address if that's okay. It's 317 4th Avenue North, Jacks Beach. Dropped off the schedule for deck chairs this year. 6 years now. Thank you. We honored to put another event on for the city of Jacks Beach. The schedule, just for interest of the council, we have a full one. We're gonna have about 40 chairs out there. We've got some pretty crazy looking chairs, I think, as well. There's a big one that's being done by Beaches Go Green. Expect to see about 5 large jellyfish, 13 and a half, 14 feet up in the air, 10-foot diameter domes, using a lot of plastics to bring awareness for recycle plastics. They partnered up with the folks over at Republic Services, so we've got some cool partnerships. Republic Service and Artistic Contractors and Beaches Go Green are going to be featured in that south end of the pavilion. We also have a pretty cool relationship this year with the K9 for Warriors, and they've got a team of about 14 people working on their chair. I think it's going to be pretty exciting. A lot of chairs, a lot of fun. With the schedule, just a couple things that, or one at least, that I think is pretty interesting. We have a Tax Slayer Gator Bowl coming out here this year. So I don't think that's ever been done before. We'll have both schools, their marching bands. We'll have the Marine Corps band. They're going to pretty much have the park on the 30th. I think we're going to see several thousand that are going to come out and enjoy not only the marching bands and all the festivities and the chairs, but they're going to certainly, I think, fill up the restaurants and the bars, and it should be a pretty cool day for our beach businesses. And then expect the Night of Music and Dance to be a pretty awesome event with about 6 dance troops, but we're going to back the schedule up a little bit. We're going to run the kids for a couple hours earlier, and then about 6:30 PRI is going to take over the space. So they're actually going to help us with lights, with sound, really elevate the whole ambiance of the park, and then they're going to throw an additional party out there in the park. No alcohol, it's all going to be free. We're just, continuing to try to build and make this a better event for our residents, our businesses, and of course our sponsors. So, thanks.
Thank you, sir. Curtis, you're doing a tremendous job, and you gotten bigger and better every year, and it's all because you've been driving. So thank you very much.
Okay, I've got a quick question.
Uh-oh.
All these people are supporting you?
Yes, in fact, that's probably not even a complete list, but that's
incredible.
yeah, it's a wonderful list of sponsorships. Yeah.
Wow.
All right, thanks so much.
Well done, Curtis. Thank you. Mick DeRocher, Mick, if you come forward, give us your name and address, you'll have 3 minutes, sir.
My name is Mick DeRocher. I live at 41 Millie Drive, Jackson Beach, Florida. Last week in the paper, Beach Leader, there was a little comment about, I guess it was the Downtown Redevelopment Agency or something like that, that one of the persons had said something about being whistled at by a toothless person or something like that. And it's kind of like she was insinuating that this only happens, like in the downtown area, that's where we have like the riffraff. Recently, I think Mr. Daugherty said it's a shame that, you have to have a hard time going to Publix, the grocery store over here, where they ended up taking the coffee machine, free coffee out of there because of the homeless or transients or what have you. And so then they ended up hiring the police to stand around in the parking lot to try and ward off the transients and or homeless. So today I was at McDonald's and they're tearing off the front porch of McDonald's down here on 3rd Street. And the reason they're tearing it off is because they had no other way to sort of get rid of the transients and homeless that congregate there every morning. So while this person is talking about the downtown area, the whole thing is kind of like a whole package. You can come over here and look at downtown and see whatever you want to see, but when you just go a couple of blocks away, we have Shutter Avenue, which is, it's just crazy over there. You go by the Mission House in the morning, and across the street from the Mission House on Fred Fair's plumbing property right there, there's a whole tribe of people camped out right there. And then over here on the, a block towards Beach Boulevard where there's a concrete sidewalk, there'll be another tribe camped out there beside the wrestling or whatever it is, martial arts studio. And those people are there because they're not allowed on Mission House grounds. They've been barred from the grounds, but they can sit across the street and wait on their friends to go in and get something to eat, a shower, some clothes or something like that. And it's pretty unsightly. If you don't go by there, my office is down the street down there. I go by there all the time. And, you go like, wow, what is wrong with this? So the person that's talking about trying to beautify downtown, the whole thing fits together. It's all part of the city. And the police department, their official policy is and probably has to be that it's not against the law to be homeless. I understand that. The second part is we cannot arrest our way out of this situation. So it just keeps kind of getting swept to the side or whatever. And, we have no support. I don't know what the interlocal agreement says about as far as court and jail. I don't understand that. But I personally had one of my guys get arrested under the pier for drinking under the pier, drinking in public. So that was on Tuesday. So I pick him up at jail Wednesday afternoon and then drop him off. And Wednesday night he goes to jail for drinking under the pier. Now, he gets out the next day. So everybody that goes to court for these little infractions or whatever, the charges are always dismissed. They come back here and say, oh, they dropped the charges. We just don't have any support, any teeth in what we're doing. It seems like the courts downtown
We need to wrap up.
just let it go.
Right.
This just
I hear you loud and clear, and you know what, there isn't a simple solution. I know for a fact that we work diligently with the City of Jacksonville and the judicial system, District Attorney's Office, State Attorney's Office, everybody to get this CHOP program up and running. It has had a positive impact, particularly in the last few years. I understand that the population of the homeless may have grown this last year. We're waiting to get the census report on that. I don't think anybody's getting pushed to the side. We'll continue to work on it as best we can and find hopefully more creative solutions to make a difference. But I think we're all seeing it.
Yeah, but if I were to ask you for an audit, all these people get put into a home or an apartment, and I said, can I see the audit of where they are 3 months or 6 months later? I personally know a couple of people that were put into apartments for 90 days, 3 months, 3 months rent-free, and at the end of 90 days, they just walked out the door and left everything behind because there was some sort of insane dump on the other side of the river. So we're not even auditing, we're just taking somebody's word, like, I've solved the problem, I put everybody in a house. And, we're not following up.
We could have a long discussion on this, but thank you very much for your input, though. Appreciate it. Ken Marsh, Ken, if you come forward, give us your name and address, you'll have 5 minutes, sir. 3 minutes. Thank you.
Ken Marsh, 2011 Gale Avenue. In the interest of trying to keep the coalition updated on a few issues, there are 4 items that are outstanding, or at least need to understand where we are in the sense they were brought up in previous discussions. So Karen or Janelle, if somebody from the city can get back to me and at least give me an idea, or whoever generated the idea. I've got Chris, where you talked about the feasibility of maybe an economic development type of person. My guess is you probably want to table it until after the CRA, but if officially, I think that's probably where. And
Ken,
then,
if I can interrupt you, Ken, I was going to tell you, the city manager and I have talked about this, and we're actually going to set up somebody through the planning department that will respond to you.
Oh, awesome.
For these issues.
well, okay, and including the crosswalk. Chris brought up an idea on the crosswalk going to the downtown.
I can tell you that for the last 3 weeks, we've probably all put in 60 to 80-hour weeks to get everything done that we've gotten done, and I don't have an update for you, Ken.
No, I mean, I'm not asking for an update today, or just that, is the crosswalk idea DOA?
No.
Or is
You're talking about across 3rd Street?
Yeah.
No, it's not DOA.
Okay.
We're still working on it.
Yeah, so if it's in process, or somebody, the Department of Transportation, the thing is that there are some very good ideas that are generated, and that sometimes we don't know where these ideas go. And certainly that crosswalk is a very important issue that I'm sure the citizens want to know, at some point where this goes. We've talked about other issues that perhaps we need updates on. And I know today we got an update that I think the SRX alcohol ordinance is still illegal, but do we look at that as perhaps being done by 2018, or does it look like, because we've got Thanksgiving and Christmas coming on, and I know that that's a very important issue as well. So I know we were looking at trying to get a first reading out there, some time frame maybe.
Still being worked on about it.
Okay. So and then we've got the maintenance issue on some of our key sculptures like the surfer and the out here, which would be important to get cleaned up and painted, especially with the deck of chairs coming up, that we're going to have visitors coming in and they're going to be looking at the deck of chairs. So getting this maintained and up to speed, I think would be valuable. So anyway, just trying to understand where we are with some of this. It's important, I think, for the citizens to understand.
Appreciate it. We're going to, like I said, we use the planning department as the responsing.
And that'd be Bill?
Well, it'll be his department.
Okay.
We'll connect you with that person, okay?
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, I think that's everybody else is tied to an agenda item. So we'll go ahead and move forward to 205. And go ahead, you can read the
I make a motion that we appoint Michael J. Stephanopoulos to serve as the city manager for the city of Jacksonville Beach for an indefinite term beginning January 28, 2019, and approve the employment agreement.
Second.
Got a motion and a second, and I'm just going to take a minute to talk a little bit about the process and how we got to where we are today. This was an extensive nationwide search that we conducted. Do you have any slides for this?
I do not.
Okay. That was conducted after George Ford was retired after 24 years. We went through an agency that we felt fairly strongly about. We got 8 final candidates, and then it was whittled down to 5. We had interviews with the 5 candidates as a group, and then we had individual interviews with each of the 5 candidates. And we ranked, believe it or not, unanimously our selected candidate, which is Mike Stephanopoulos. Mike is currently the assistant city manager for Largo, Florida. He's been there for a total of 19 years, 12 of the last years as city manager. Very energetic, very, very positive, very exciting with new ideas, and we're very much looking forward to working with Mike. Mike will be here towards the second half of January, and Karen will continue as our interim city manager until Mike gets here and gets his feet on the ground. But this agenda item tonight is it's public record, so we'll just talk a little bit about it. January 28th will be his start date. His annual salary is $161,000. Has an additional vehicle allowance of $4,800 and a cell phone. He has the option to participate in the city's pension plan or have contributions made to a deferred compensation plan, which a lot of city managers do, by the way. And George Forbes did that. Health, dental, and other insurance is provided to all city employees, and the city will pay Mr. Stephanopoulos moving expenses to relocate from his current home in Clearwater. I can just tell you that I was very excited during this process. I think all of us were, that we found such a great candidate. Negotiating a contract with him, I got to learn a little bit more about his keen business acumen, and he's a pretty sharp dude. But he's going to be a good addition to Jacksonville Beach. Does anybody have anything they'd like to add before we vote? Okay, then this is the vote for accepting him as our city manager and approving his contract. Madam Clerk, can we get a roll call, please?
Councilmember Buck?
Yes.
Councilmember Doherty?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoffman?
Yes.
Councilmember Thomason?
Yes.
Councilmember Vogelsang?
Yes.
Councilmember Wilson? Yes. Mayor Latham?
Yes, and then we're on to 118-206, please.
I I make a motion that we authorize the mayor and city manager to execute an agreement with JEA that will allow JEA to provide water and sewer service to the property at 4343 Ocean Course Drive, parcel ID RE number 180476-0000, and the surrounding unimproved parcels.
Second.
Got a motion and a second, Ms. Nelson. Uh-oh, clicker malfunction.
Clicker malfunction, and I have them out there.
There you
There we go.
Just got a delay. The prop,
George is at work.
I believe you're right.
Okay. The property that we're talking about is just north of the St. Johns County line and east of the 2nd Street right-of-way. There's a circle, I'm scared to use the pointer, but there's a circle around the property that we're talking about. It's in question. The property is currently utilizing well water and it has a septic tank. The property owner would like to connect to water and sewer. It is within the city of Jacksonville Beach city limits. However, our closest city water sewer connections are 800 feet away from the property on the north side of the JTB on-ramp. In order for the city to compel the property owner to connect to our water and sewer system, we would have to extend our lines to within 100 feet of the property. The estimated project cost for us to extend those water and sewer lines all the way to his property, the property in question, is $329,846. So it's just not feasible for us to spend that kind of money to connect to one property to our water and sewer system. Just on the other side of the county line in St. Johns County is JEA water and sewer territory, service territory. JEA is willing to extend their own water and sewer lines to the property in the Jacksonville Beach city limits. And the estimated cost to extend that for JEA is significantly less than ours, and the owner is willing to pay the cost to tap into the JEA lines. The results would be better service to the resident, and we would have one less septic tank in use within the city of Jacksonville Beach. In order for JEA to connect this customer to their water and sewer system, they require a memorandum of understanding with our city to authorize them to provide water and sewer service within our Jacksonville Beach city limits. I don't know if I have another slide or not, but I think that is everything, unless anybody has any questions.
And you did say that, you did mention that there are a few other locations that JEA handles some of our customers as well.
Not JEA, but we do have 5 properties in Neptune Beach that are served by the city of Jacksonville Beach Water and Sewer. And we have 2 Jacksonville Beach properties in the Marsh Landing area that are served by St. Johns County Water and Sewer Utility. So this is not an unusual arrangement. It just is a matter of what makes the most economic sense.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Wilson?
Thank you. I have a question. I drove by there today, just looking at the area and all, and is that there's 2 properties, 2 parcels that would be affected, is that correct? Yes, if I can get back to my map, and one of them looked like there was a brand new house being built on nearby. South. Over the St. Johns County line. Oh, that's not across the line. Yeah, so right, that's the blue line in St. Johns County. Just south of there are 2 properties being built. Okay. And JEA is already extending their service for those 2 new properties, so to get the distance from there to the property in our city limits is minimal. So it's practically next door to where they're servicing anyway? Yes, it is. It is literally the parcel next to it that's connected. Right. So, but there'll be another parcel that could be developed that would be affected by that? Could be within, this whole area is owned by the same property owner. This is the only part that's developed right now. Okay. There is a potential that this could be developed in the future, and those properties would also be served by JEA. So the potential is for a maximum of maybe 5 properties. It would take, if we extended our line from here, which is where our line ends, if we spent the money to extend our line all the way to here, even if all 5 of these were developed, it would take 100 years for us to recover our cost. Right. So by this vote, we're agreeing to let all of those properties that might be developed to be part of the JEA system.
Yes, now this whole area that surrounds JTB is not developable, that's DOT right away.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. Mr. Doherty?
Thank you. Yeah, Karen, I just had a real quick question regarding the other map. I don't think the public can see it, but it's in our, it's behind the photograph map.
Right, the one
It
with the
shows-
parcel lines?
Yeah, it shows the lot parcels, but it says, does Second Street dissect Mr. Dean's properties? According to this map, it does, but obviously there's trees on that photograph. But is that an issue where
Yeah, so it runs, I believe, right in between these properties, this and this, but they're all owned by the same property owner.
what does the city of Jacksonville Beach own the area between the two plots? As
Right here?
on the map, you can't really, you see on the map where it
Right.
says Second Street, it dissects them.
Yes,
Is that it?
yes,
So the city owns the land between the two properties?
yes.
Okay. Is that something that the property owner is looking to, for us to abandon, or what? Was there plans ever to continue Second Street as far south as that, or?
Most of that is not developable
Right.
land between here where our service stops and here where his begins.
Okay.
There's nothing there that is developable.
So this is just part of what's this, for the property appraiser probably?
This,
plot
the
plan?
parcel?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. That's all, I was just being nosy. Thanks.
No?
Thank you, sir. Any other comments from the council? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Councilmember Doherty?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoffman?
Yes.
Councilmember Thomason?
Yes.
Councilmember Vogelsang?
Yes.
Councilmember Wilson?
Yes.
Councilmember Buck?
Yes.
Mayor Latham?
Yes. And moving on to 207, please.
I make a motion that we award RFP number 06-1718, oceanfront cleaning continuous services for the 36 months to the highest ranked respondent, Beach Raker LLC, and authorize the city manager to extend the contract for up to an additional 3 years for a total contract length not to exceed 6 years.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Ms. Nelson?
Okay, I'm having malfunction. Lori, do you have another one of these? Yeah, it's probably the battery, it's got a delay, there we go. The RFP for oceanfront cleaning services was issued on August 29th, 2018, requesting unit prices for base and optional items. The base items that we're talking about are manual and mechanical cleaning of the beachfront, the beaches. And some of the optional items include cleaning of our parks, parking lots, and other public areas. We issued 11 proposal packages, and we received back 2 proposals. We had a committee that reviewed all the proposals, and Beach Raker LLC received the highest ranking. Again, these are the services that are provided by the RFP, and we estimate our annual cost will be about $305,240, utilizing the base services of manual and mechanical cleaning of the beaches, and then the optional services that we intend to utilize will be cleaning of some of our public parking lots and parks and other city-owned properties such as grassy areas. We have some various areas throughout the city that we would plan to utilize them for. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. We've got a few cards for this item, this agenda item. First, Adam Hoyles. Did I say that correctly?
Yes.
Adam, if you come forward, give us your name and address, you'll have 3 minutes, sir.
Hello, my name is Adam Hoyles. I live at 4355 Beverly Avenue in Jacksonville. I'm not a Beaches resident, but I am a Duval County resident.
I also am Vice President of Operations for an environmental consulting firm. And we are the environmental consultant currently for the City of Jacksonville. We're doing some work for the City of Neptune Beach. We've done work for the City of Atlantic Beach, on-site environmental consulting. And Jolynn is actually my part-time assistant. So whereas her business does not depend on me, I depend on her to help run my business. And I've looked through how the award decision was made, and basically you guys gave a lot of credit to a company that doesn't have a presence in this county. When I got contract award for the City of Jacksonville, I had proof that I was a business in Duval County and did business here. I had a business license here, and an office here, and employees here. I'm not sure how a South Florida company got a lot of credit for being a local firm. That I find very troubling. The other item that I find odd is I was talking to Jolynn about 14 years of history with the City of Jacksonville Beach, and based on the options you guys have traditionally awarded, and her firm's actually less expensive. So I find, again, the award of a non-local, company with no presence, no employees, no office in this area, I find that troubling as another local business. When I bid on projects, I expect to only be counted as a local business if I actually have a local presence there. If this award is made to Beachraker, you guys are basically going to be putting a small business out of business. This is what they do. This is what they've done for a very long time. And they've done a very good job of it. So I would ask you to reconsider the recommended motion and leave the business with a local business. They live here, they work here. The owners are out there doing the work, and they care a lot about it. And I don't really think you're going to get that from a big South Florida company that frankly doesn't live or work here. So, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Jolynn Cordova, if you'd come forward, give us your name and address, you'll have 5 minutes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Jolynn Cordova. My address is 1810 Ramblin' Ridge Lane, Jacksonville. My husband and I own Beachcombers North. We are here to ask you to please vote no on the award of the oceanfront cleaning contract to Beachrakers and to award the contract to Beachcombers North. We've been cleaning our beach for the last 14 years, and my dad for 17 years prior to us. So Beachcombers is a small local business that is family owned and minority owned, and that has been committed to cleaning our beach for over 30 years. I know it is in the best interest of the taxpayers, property owners, and the city to secure the best work and materials at the lowest practical price. While the South Florida-based Beachrakers equipment seems very impressive, the annual cost looks to be about $21,291 higher than ours. Even though the grand total of the 29-item RFP shows that we are $8,000 higher annually, when the 2 base items and the 7 options that have traditionally been executed are totaled, it will cost the City of Jacks Beach over $21,000 more for Beachrakers than for Beachcombers North. Therefore, Beachcombers North is the best economic choice. Also, the annual contract amount that we receive stays local, either directly in Jacks Beach or in Duval County. And because Beachcombers is local, my husband is out on the beach almost every day, supervising and or working alongside our employees. Beachrakers is headquartered in Broward County. At the time of the RFP, They do not have an office in Duval County, nor did they list one in the submittal, which was an item specifically requested in the RFP. Yet they were awarded 15 of 20 points for not having a local office. I have multiple TripAdvisor and Yelp comments regarding the cleanliness of the beach. Just 7 days ago, someone wrote, "This is a nice, wide, well-maintained beach." Another, "The beach is beautiful, pristine, and clean." These are just two of many comments. So even though we may not have fancy equipment yet, we have proven to get the job done. I hope you will take this into consideration. A, that Beachcombers North could be the most economical choice, and B, that we are local, and the contract money stays local. Plus, we have the support of many businesses, organizations, and residents of Jax Beach. And I believe that speaks highly of our good work and name. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Joan, appreciate it. Okay, that's the only speaker cards I have. Ms. Nelson, do you want to address it? Do you want to bring Lewis up?
I think Ms. Lewis, our property and procurement officer, and then we may want to ask the city attorney for some advice. Do you want to take questions or?
Well, no, I think what we need to do at this point is have Lewis describe the process, and then we can ask questions, talk a little bit more clearly, because obviously it was brought up by one of the speakers that we were $21,000 more going with this vendor than we would if we were going with a local vendor. And so if you could be responding to some of those questions in your discussion.
So the process is that my name is Louis Flores, I'm property procurement officer. So this is an RFP, not a low bid. It's an evaluated process. There's 5 criteria that's considered by the department for making a recommendation for award. The RFP was issued, it was approximately a month out on the streets. As Karen said, there was 2 respondents. One was the incumbent, a second was another firm that was not in the local area. Of the 5 criteria, let me grab that real quick. Past record was 1, local project office was another, mechanical equipment and experience using it was the 3rd, beach cleaning plan was the 4th, and cost was the 5th. With regards specifically to the cost, there were base items and there were optional items. I would probably have to defer back to the department for the specifics as to which items they're going to select. I know that during the discussions there were comments made that there may be additional work that may be requested of the vendor since they have the capacity. But once again, I would defer that back to the department. The respondent processed and requested the protest in ample time. They met all the deadlines. Many times we like to say in our department that they're our customer as well. Not only is the department the customer, so is the respondent. So we try to be as responsive as we can with them, knowing full well that they have to make business decisions. But for the most part, the vendors had to respond to the RFP. Local project office was one of the requirements. The vendor, as you mentioned, the incumbent got the full score of 20, and Beachraker received 15. During the initial selection committee meeting, there were questions by the Public Works Department as to the office and whether or not they had a presence. So a subsequent informal meeting, informational meeting was held by the Public Works Department and our group with the vendor that had made the proposal. And they addressed specifically those items that were in question, which was the project, the local project office and their equipment. They brought the equipment up to Jacksonville to do a presentation, and then they affirmed that if they got the work, that they would go ahead and open an office in the Jacksonville area. But if I remember correctly, the comment was that we will not open an office unless we get the work. So they were looking to establish a presence in the Northeast Florida area. I don't know if I've answered that. Hopefully I've answered all your questions.
There's several people want to answer questions, but the one that pops in my mind is the equipment we mentioned. Was there some kind of specs that were requiring different equipment than what the previous vendor had been using?
Yeah, so one of the criteria was for them to showcase their mechanical equipment and their ability using it. I'm not a subject matter expert when it comes to that, but I remember the day that we did go out there, the incumbent was doing cleanup, and then the new vendor, or the vendor that's being proposed, had done a sweep right afterwards, and they were able to get some additional products and items that were in the sand. I don't know if that's as a result of the equipment, but I know that there's proprietary items that they had mentioned that they didn't want to be disclosed. Public Works is probably the best group to speak about that because they know all the ins and outs, but I know that the equipment was brought up and it was fairly new, and they made comments to that.
Okay, thank you. Pat, why don't you come on up too, and because I'm sure there's going to be some directed to Public Works as well, and we'll go down the queue. I think Mr. Vogelsang was first.
Would you mind addressing the couple issues that Mr. Flores couldn't touch on as far as the equipment demonstration? What's your experience with the current company, and then can you talk about the presentation of what equipment and the differences between the two as you saw?
I'm sorry, man, we need to state your name.
I'm sorry, Patrick Deegan, City of Jacksonville Beach General Supervisor of Public Works.
Thank you.
The current equipment that's being used and everything is a rake which is overturning the sand on the beach right now. It does pick up the bigger pieces. It overturns the seaweed and it does collect trash. The equipment that we had, that the beach raker bring up and everything, it's more mechanical. It has it fine picks the sand. It gets small debris. It sifts the sand basically, kind of like what's going on at the south end with the dredging and everything with the requirements. They trying to get all that shell or any type of debris that may cause harm to the public. The equipment that they have is a better process, of course. And Beachcombers, what they do and have done and everything has also worked best, and they have always had compliments as well to how our beach is.
Anything else, Mr. Wilson?
That's all I have as far as questions.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Thompson?
I have just a couple of comments that I want to.
Yes, sir.
The concern, I guess, obviously the equipment is a particular issue. We've been working with this vendor for 14 years. And we're still utilizing old equipment, and she indicates that the options are typically triggered, which means we've been spending $500,000. Is that about right, Karen?
No.
We do not typically trigger all of those options that are listed on this. Last year, we spent somewhere south of $300,000.
Okay, so still around the 300,000 mark. I guess after 14 years, and just looking at this from a bird's eye view, you would hope some of that money would be going back in to get new equipment to keep up with the type of equipment that's being utilized. I don't know if that's the concern that I have, sticking with the same company, and would lean on the quality of work. I understand the local thing, but quality of work would be important, and obviously equipment is important. So that's kind of where I'm kind of torn in addressing it. It seems like the cost is equal. That's kind of just where I'm at right now.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Thompson?
Thank you, Mayor. I don't know if this would be for you, Ms. Nelson, or you, the gentleman. Do we have documented problems with the service provided by Beachcombers?
Pat, would you mind answering that?
We do not have any documented problems with Beachcombers.
Okay. Second question, do we know how long it would take beach rakers to get rolling, have an office here, and be in operation? Assuming that we approved a contract with them tonight?
In conversation, at least 30 days for them to be able to move on site.
Sign a contract, sorry. Okay.
We're currently going month to month with Beachcombers. Their contract has expired.
I asked if there was a contract start date, so that was her response to that question. I apologize.
For $8,000 difference for a company that, based upon the little information y'all give me now, seems to have provided excellent service to us for 14 years and counting. And for a company to come in here and they say they're going to do things, quite frankly, I have to agree with the owner to give them 15 points for having a local office. 15 out of 20 seems to me to be a tremendous overreaction, and I have to tell you, I will not support the contract with Beach Raiders. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Doherty?
Thank you. Yeah, a couple of questions. Can you explain the criteria for selecting or judging the past record, given that Beach Raker have no previous history in this area? How did they score 20 out of 20?
I believe it was what they submitted with their RFP and everything, and also probably doing background checks on the current vendors that they're providing. Yes.
So there was contact with, are they doing jobs for communities in South Florida?
Yes, there was.
And they scored highly?
The contacts that were spoken to and everything, they spoke very highly of Beach Raker.
So how do we come to the 18.33 for Beachcombers?
That
Are you referring to criteria number one?
The past record, yeah, which I mean, I'm just going to give you the reason I'm asking this is because to me the most important thing would be the job they're going to do. The local project office to me shouldn't be 20% of any type of contract award. That's kind of a midpoint. The equipment is important because we want the best job done. The beach cleaning plan is also, one would argue, semantics because you're either going to clean the beach or not. I don't think that should be a scoring criteria. And then the cost being 20% also, given that we're using taxpayer dollars and they expect the beach to be cleaned, I would assume that should have been a higher, given a higher percentage. But regardless of what I think, I'm just asking how you got to what the record, and then I am interested to follow on what my colleague Mr. Vogelsang said. How come there was such a difference in the equipment? Is Beachcombers equipment noticeably worse than Beach Rakers? Pat, you said that there was other things picked up. Beach Rakers.
it's a completely different piece of equipment what they're utilizing.
Right.
It's an actual sifter. It has additional engines.
Right.
It's rotating. It's picking up. Beachcombers. I mean, the rake is what's been typically used. Beach Raker, I believe they also use that same process as well, but the new mechanical means is it just cleans the beach better.
Is it the same time? Does it take the same time to go over the sand as a rake would?
It's a slower process, but I would think after doing it over, weekly for several weeks and everything, the process will become faster because you're eliminating that debris with that process.
So you think even though it'll take longer, there's still enough time to complete the whole beach as per their schedule? Because I take it this is done daily?
No, it's mechanical. The RP is built for mechanical cleaning the beach for 1 day a week and everything, and that is not necessarily that it's all done in 1 day. It can be broken up over several days, and preferably, like Beachcomber does, they clean and rake the beach of the downtown area and everything basically the end of the week or that Saturday morning, so it's looking decent for all the visitors that come here.
Okay. All right. And I mean, this is a quite. If I could have asked, is it Jolene?
Yes, sir.
I mean, have you given, if you would mind, come on for a second, Scott. Have you given any thought to perhaps, and I mean, it's your business, obviously, invest the money in this new system that seems to be the big difference in these scores is the equipment?
We have looked at it. It is extremely expensive. We do not get what was stated as an annual amount. That's what the total price is for the RFP, but what we, the 2 base items and then the 7 option items that we are actually awarded each, with the contract, it's much less than that, than 300,000. So it's, it's a very expensive equipment when we looked into it. But it is something that we have spoken about and we have looked into again. But of course, it was right before the contract, so it's not something, we just bought a brand new rake, a 14-foot rake. Now, and you have to realize too that we're not just raking the beach and picking up. We are also hand picking with the ATV, with people, cleaning the beach.
So you have employees now?
Oh, yes, yes.
How many employees do you have?
It depends on the time of the year. Summertime, 5 to 6. Wintertime, we're about 3, 4. Obviously it's, well, of course, this last winter, it was rather busy. So we kept doing more.
And they're usually from local families, I would
Yes, sir.
assume?
Yes, most of our employees are from Jack's Beach, or they're definitely from Duval County. Our son-in-law works for us. We try to hire some high school students during the summer, or college students if possible, because that is our busier time.
Well, in all frankness as well, when Mr. Deegan said about the difference in the machinery, did you notice, obviously you're biased towards your own business, but did you notice that, was there a tangible difference in the equipment as far as the end result?
Where I saw it was actually down in South Florida, and it's a different type of sand. So it does pick up a lot of the, I'm not going to lie, does pick up a lot of the little stuff that, we're not always able, you just can't pick up every cigarette butt or bottle cap, things like that. I'm not going to lie to you. But I do feel that what we do pick up, and then fortunately we have so many incredible organizations that come out, and that's their thing, is to come out and pick up those bottle caps and have that satisfaction of helping out. So.
Okay, well, thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Buck.
Yeah, I do have a question on several of these. Past record of beach cleaning experience. You did say that you've had no complaints about the work they've done in the past.
No, we have not had any complaints, no.
So some of these are a little bit difficult to understand. The mechanical equipment, the current beachcombers admitted that their equipment doesn't pick up bottle caps and some of the things apparently the other. And then, I'm not going to be here, but in the future, I think it really helps if you have a picture of equipment that makes a difference, because that's a tremendous difference that has been accredited to that. And we're being told that, it's some bit better, but, and I'm not going to question your integrity on that. But anyhow, after 14 years, I really have a problem with the justification of some of these scores. And I have a question
Is that it? Thank you, sir. Ms. Wilson?
Thank you. I have mixed thoughts about this. I like going local and staying with a firm that we've been pleased with up to date, and a lot of our citizens also have spoken highly of the Beach Combers organization. So having said that, though, we did, have interviews, and I was not part of the interview process or the screening process. So I think we also have to trust our city employees that they made the right decision. So, and if I had been there, sitting there through the whole process, then maybe I would understand. I did talk with one of them, and they did explain some of the reasons. So I think we have to kind of trust our staff in making this decision. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Hoffman?
I think all of my questions and concerns have been addressed, and I think I echo Mr. Thomason's comments most closely, but I just think I'm very skeptical of an out-of-town company being able to come in, completely set up shop, especially with what sounds like very expensive equipment, and that we have kind of a known entity here that we could stick with, and they already have the relationships going on. I think that counts for something, and I think it counts for something in this case. So. And normally I would love to be able to just trust the evaluation criteria, but I think it's important to consider the service to the city so far, and that it has been with little to no complaint.
Thank you. And I've got a couple of things. The equipment issue, we're getting a pass around now. I don't know if we can get a clarifier on which specific equipment it is. But that plays a big part in this. There's a delta in price, and the delta in price primarily appears to be because of this equipment that does a much better job. So that's something to be considered. Also, the capital. I'm in the business where we have a lot of trucks. Part of the money that we spend goes into updating trucks and putting new trucks on the street to keep everything fresh and current, and it doesn't sound like we've done that in the last 14 years. Is that correct? Gentlemen?
As far as trucks go?
Your equipment in general.
I was going to say, we have to replace, and that's part of the reason, our trucks, our tractors.
Could you go up to?
Yeah, please.
Sorry.
State your name again for the record, please.
Jolyn Cordova.
And the question I'm going to restate is, just tell us a little bit about why the capital's not going back into the equipment and improving your equipment.
It's not going back into the equipment to purchase something that planned. It's going back into, we upgrade our tractors whenever we have to buy a new tractor. We've upgraded our trucks as we've had to buy new trucks, trailers, ATVs.
So do you have a plan to replace those, so that you're like a phased rotation of equipment and scheduling a new rake every 2 years and a new truck every 3 years or anything like that?
Pretty much. That's about the time frame. Because unfortunately, the sand loves to eat it that way at that equipment. So as we are, having to buy new equipment, we definitely try to improve to the best of our ability as to what's out there. No, we don't have that fancy piece of equipment that can sift the sand at the same time that it's raking. We haven't reached that point. We're a very small business.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. And I don't know if Lewis or Pat's the right guy to ask, but one of the first speakers we had said that there was a $21,000 delta in the pricing. That there was $21,000 more. Who did? Joe Linder? Okay. So the owner of the current vendor said that there was a $21,000 cheaper to use them. Do we have anything that would justify that claim, or is anything to refute that claim?
With the current options, what Public Works has been doing and continue to do with, obviously one more option that has been brought to the table with this RFP, which is the new parking lot that went up on the north end. I believe the difference between the two proposals, just in that doing what we currently are, what we've been doing is, I think roughly $8,000 to $10,000 of difference in price.
Okay.
And I can't speak exactly for, I mean.
So just so I'm clear, I'm sorry, $8,000 to $10,000 difference in price between the two proposed responses. But one's got a very expensive piece of equipment that picks up little pieces of stuff, and that one's not. Is that in your opinion, a fair differentiation between that increased expense for that capability of equipment?
Seeing the product and what it does, I would say yes.
Okay.
I believe beachcombers would be like around 290,000. I think we're looking at 302,000. I think for the options currently Blowworks does. But I'm sure that, I mean, looking at the overall RFP and for Parks and Recs and other divisions that will be used, that's how it was used as a whole. And as for further discussion or anything, the owner of Beach Breakers is here. If you guys would like to also speak to him, they might be able to answer some better questions. Maybe not can answer too well for you guys right now.
No, but I'd love for him to come up. How you doing, sir?
Good. Thank you very much for your time today. My name is Chip Jones. I'm the president of Beach Raker. Beach Raker is a 41-year-old company based out of South Florida. That's correct. I do have Jacksonville ties. My father lives in Avondale. I will be the one that's relocating to Jacksonville in order to be able to set up the shop here. At the time of the RFP, we did not have a local location. We're taking over Amelia Island as well, and we needed to know how much equipment we were going to put in place because that would determine how large the location we needed to set up. We've already looked for local employees at the DAV, the American Legion, and on base. I'm a disabled veteran, run business. I spent 24 years in the Marine Corps before I basically transitioned out and purchased as a partner of Beach Raker, and I work with a partner of 3 people. We run 11 municipalities, 365 days a year. Those municipalities take up 4 counties. We have Monroe County, Miami-Dade County, Broward County, and Palm Beach County. We have the city of Key Biscayne, the city of Marathon, the city of Miami Beach, the city of Fort Lauderdale, the city of Hollywood, Pompano Beach, Deerfield Beach, Lauderdale by the Sea, just to name a few, and I can continue on with the municipalities that we work. Our largest municipality or contracts have been done for almost 40 years now, and again, we have an excellent record. And at the end of the day, we're here to basically support our local economies. And local economies means our Florida-based economies. Tourism is one of the key things that brings our economy together. We'd like to work with Beachcomber in order to make sure we have a smooth transition and also be able to utilize their expertise and their employees. We're just bringing a new capital base. I've already spent $250,000 on equipment for this contract. You have all brand new equipment set in place and ready to go. The equipment that you see there, that's an M5111 Kubota tractor as well as a 7060 Kubota tractor. We also have a Barber surf rake and a Beach Tech 2800. You talked about the type of equipment that can pick up. That's going to run a 30 mil screen. That's 30 mil screen basically works to sanitize your sand. It can pick up as small as bottle caps or cigarette butts, but it allows the sand and your seashells in order to basically fall through that 30 mil screen. I can switch that out depending on the time of the year and the type of garbage that we expect. I can run a 20 or a 40 mil screen on those pieces of equipment. The Barber surf rake works more along your rack line, so in the seasonal changes when you have seaweed, we can run that down into the seaweed line. We also have proprietary equipment that we use to bury the seaweed. We bury it at a depth of 24 to 36 inches. The proprietary equipment's been used, and I consult over in the Caribbean currently based on the sargassum invasion. I've been consulting in St. John, Barbuda, and Antigua on how to handle their beach programs, and they've purchased some of our proprietary equipment.
Phil, did you have a question, Chip? Thanks, Chip. Appreciate it. That's impressive. Mr. Rhodes, any have another?
I think just to put on the record why I'm going to support the contract is I think it's important for cigarette butts and bottle caps and things like that to be siphoned if you're cleaning the beach. And obviously I understand common sense says what a raking system does. But to have the ability to siphon out material like that, I think is extremely important. And unfortunately, they haven't, for 14 years, switched to this type of equipment. That's a disappointment to me because I would like to stick with them, but my reason for going with this contract would be for that reason. So that's where I'm going with it.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Buck?
Yeah, I was tending toward sticking with our current provider, and the key to me was the equipment, and such an issue was made out of that, and the difference of pricing. But after seeing the equipment, which was just passed through, and the fact that it is expensive, it does get bottle caps, and would this leave us with a clean beach? I'm really torn on this. Anytime somebody's given 14 years and it's local, really deserves special consideration if it were all possible. But I'm tending toward really I've got problems with some of these scores, but after seeing the equipment and hearing what it can do, it's swaying me.
Thank you, sir. Nobody else on the queue. I'm just going to give my 2 cents before we take a vote. This is what free enterprise is all about. I'm all for local companies too, and I'd like to give the nod to local companies whenever we can. But I think our primary responsibility is for the citizens of the community, making sure that we're paying good money for the right services, and it's the right thing to do. I can tell you that it's not uncommon in my industry for people to not have an office until they win a contract. So I don't think that should be a huge negative. And it sounds like the owner of Beach Raker was talking about using local folks. So that's equally as important as well. But I know it's an emotional vote, but I think we have to make the best vote for the citizens of Jacksonville Beach. So along those lines, Madam Clerk, if you would roll call, please.
Councilmember Hoffman.
No.
Councilmember Thomason.
No.
Councilmember Vogelsang.
Yes.
Councilmember Wilson.
Yes.
Councilmember Buck.
Yes.
Councilmember Doherty.
No.
Mayor Latham.
Yes. Okay, moving on to agenda item, ordinance 208. So Madam Clerk, if you could please read ordinance number 2018-8112, first reading, public hearing by title only, please.
An ordinance to amend an ordinance enacting and establishing a comprehensive land development regulation and official zoning map for the incorporated area of the city of Jacksonville Beach, Florida, as authorized by chapter 163.3202 Florida statutes by amending various sections of the Land Development Code and providing for codification, severability, conflicts, and an effective date.
I make a motion that we adopt ordinance number 2018-8112, amending the Land Development Code to amend the text of Chapter 34, Article 2, Article 4, Article 5, Article 6, Article 7, and Article 8, including the additional amendments recommended by the Planning Commission to include Section 34-207, add language to clarify that a copy of the staff report for zoning atlas and code amendments is due to the applicant no more than 5 working days after the report is completed. Section 34-222, strengthen the language to read consideration of the report from instead of simply report from. Section 34-339E, parentheses 4G, following the change to townhouses standards for RM1 zoning districts, allowing no more than 4 townhouse units to be constructed in a row in lieu of the current 6. Add language to the state that existing townhouse developments containing more than 4 contiguous units
in existence or with approved construction permits on or before the effective date of this ordinance may be completed, repaired, or rebuilt within the same building footprint, subject to any other applicable state, federal, or local laws.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Ms. Nelson.
Periodically, the text of the Land Development Code is reviewed and amended to address needed updates or improvements or clarifications. In this case, staff developed a list of amendments for consideration to various articles within Chapter 34 of the Code of Ordinances and brought it to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission discussed at their August 27th meeting and then again at their October 22nd meeting. And at the October meeting, the Planning Commission identified additional amendments that they wish to recommend to Council. On October 22nd, the Planning Commission voted to recommend the list of amendments that you have in your agenda for approval.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Buck, I think you're first on the queue. Yeah, I beg your pardon. Thank you. This is actually a public hearing, so at this time I'm going to open the floor. Anybody from the public would like to come up and address this issue? Okay, seeing none, close the public. Oh, come on forward, give us your name. What?
I did submit a card.
I beg your pardon. Alex? Yep, this is one card. I apologize. Slip through the cracks.
No problem.
Well, the reason I did is because it's a public hearing and I meant to call it a public hearing. Go ahead, Alex.
Alex Dukakis, address 348th Street, Jacksonville Beach. I am opposed to...
Hold on, Alex. Say your address again.
348th Street, Atlantic Beach, Florida.
Atlantic Beach, okay.
Sorry, I used to live in Jack's Beach.
That's okay.
I'm opposed to the approval of these changes. There's lots in there, many changes that are going to have drastic impacts on land rights and on land values in Jacksonville Beach. The Planning Commission originally voted, they proposed and approved some other amendments to these changes, and because some procedural issues that had to be reheard at the hearing, Bill Mann got up and instructed the Planning Commission that Planning Commission was not allowed to consider or propose amendments that were ideas that had come from the public as part of the hearing, which I had never heard before. And after that happened, the Planning Commission actually approved the current version that you see of the land use changes. I do not understand why we would slam through these many changes without having at least a workshop discussion and hearing from the community and developers. I myself am a builder in Jacksonville Beach. I own rental properties in Jacksonville Beach, very invested in the community, and these changes are going to have a large impact that are not being considered by the Planning Commission. I think a workshop would be the proper way to hear what the community has to say. That's it.
Thank you. Anybody else like to speak? This is a public hearing, agenda item. Okay, close the public hearing. We move to the council. First on the queue is Mr. Buck.
Mr. Mann, could I have you come up?
Sure.
I think having been on the Board of Adjustment for approximately 8 years, this is long overdue. And I compliment you on what I thought was a very thorough job. I did have a couple of questions. For an example, this isn't a question, but just simple changes like a single family and a multi. I mean, why have to go through, a process to get something like that? But when it comes to the variance on lot coverage for a single family residence, I don't remember where I read this, but that did not change. Is that correct?
That is not proposed to be changed in this amendment package. In 2001, the last time we did this level of detail,
staff did prepare an analysis at the time of prior granted RS1 and RS2 single-family home variances, and analysis showed that generally they were being granted up to 45%, and that was proposed as an amendment, but it was turned down. It was not approved by City Council. So we did that before, but I didn't redo it again at this juncture.
Having again served on that board, I'm reiterating, but I can't remember hardly ever turning down 45%. And we keep having people come before the board and giving them 45%. And I was really hoping I would be part of this amendment here. And do I understand that we're trying to make this a beautiful beach, and if I read this correctly, add that signs on fences or perimeter walls are prohibited in addition to on trees and other vegetation. Am I reading that correctly?
Yes, sir, and that was done in response to a recent and still ongoing code enforcement issue.
Well, that's, we're trying to make this a beautiful beach, and that's, anyway, I'm not gonna go through all of them. I think I'm as familiar with them as anybody on this council, and I just think this was a real good step forward. My congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Black. Mr. Thompson?
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Mayor, do you have a copy of the ordinance?
Yes, sir. I've got the ordinance, but I also have the memo because the memo does a general outline. If you want to speak to the ordinance, I'll be happy to bring it up.
Yeah, please, I've got a question about page 2.
Yes, sir.
Just a clarification for me, top of page 2, it's section 34-41.
Yes, sir.
And you just a moment ago mentioned an issue that has been I guess
ongoing
bone of contention,
with my
I
code
guess,
enforcement staff and the public.
Yes, for the public. And so under this, where it defines artwork, in the second line of artwork, it says, does not convey the name of the business or a commercial message. Could you define for me what is a commercial message?
I can get it from the sign standards, not off the top of my head, I cannot.
Well, no, the artwork on the particular fence that we've been talking about, is that considered a commercial message?
It depends on what version of the artwork you're talking about and what day of the week. That's primarily, I can tell you why the standard is in there primarily is because when our sign code went from 8 or 9 pages to the current 20-something page document is now, the distinction was made between artwork and commercial messages. That's primarily was the intent of this. It wasn't to regulate primarily in residential zoning districts. This was more for the murals, that we see in some of the buildings around the city, which I might add right now. A lot of the murals that we see were done in advance of any regulation in terms of the amount of signage on a building. So what you see out there doesn't fall in with the current regulation that was in the 54-page sign standards that limited to 25%. Well, most of the murals were already up in the city for that time. Surfer Bar is the only mural I think that's come in there. So I don't have a comfort level with how that applies in the residential setting right now, and it was not the intent of the change to this artwork definition to address that. The thing for the signs being allowed on walls for fences, that was what was intended to address that residential issue.
Okay, and I see in this same paragraph, the proposed wording you recommend that it be removed where it says shall not exceed 1/2 of the total surface. It says all outdoor artwork shall conform to the maximum height restriction in any particular zone which it's located. Is maximum height restriction defined somewhere else?
Well, the maximum height citywide is 35 feet, but it can't exceed the height of the structure. The intent is that you don't have artwork that's visually exceeding the building surface that is painted in.
I seem to recall somewhere that we have something on signage that says it can't be greater than 4 square feet or something like that.
For residential districts? Yes, sir. That type of signage, it's It's non-commercial message signage, which would include political signs, other type of signs. Part of the impetus of that 54-page, I mean, it might be the right page number, but the recent sign code that we adopted was to enforce content neutrality. But the 4 square feet that you're locking into is the maximum size for temporary signs in residential zoning districts.
Okay, so a political message is still required to be 4 square feet
Yes,
or
sir.
less?
In a residential district.
In a residential district?
Yes, sir. And in the commercial districts, as you see, some of the commercial campaign signs are a little bit bigger right now in the commercial districts. And that's actually one of our big issues, is getting the smaller signs where they're supposed to be and getting the bigger ones where they're supposed to be.
Okay, so, and I'll stop here, but
That's okay.
let me make sure I'm perfectly clear. In a residential district, the 4 square feet is still applicable?
Yes, sir.
They're not recommending it?
Yes, sir. And if I might, can I confirm that with the table? I've got a fairly good. Okay, I'm reading from table 34, 447, 1B, criteria and limitations for all other temporary signs in all zoning districts. And for residential, RS1, RS2, RS3, RM1, and RM2, those are our 5 residential zoning districts. The maximum sign area for a temporary sign is 4 square feet.
And that stays, no recommended change to
No,
that?
sir, none at all.
Thank you. Thank
Yes,
you,
sir.
Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Mr. Volkstein?
What, was there discussion at the planning commission regarding, and this obviously isn't my, I had a couple calls on this, as far as interior setbacks. Do you know what those are, Bill? Or a 5-foot interior setback and waiving that? Was there discussion on that?
That was the issue that was brought up by the speaker a few minutes ago after the public hearing when they were deliberating in the city, the planning commission was formulating recommended changes to certain of the amendments that had already been proposed by staff. And this came up as basically a floor amendment to be added by consideration.
Can you tell me what that does without it in there now, and then what adding it does, just to educate me?
It would require a variance right now for driveways to be located within 5 feet of an interior property line. An interior property line, if you can, let's just do it really simply, a 3-unit townhouse project, be simple. Each person owns his own unit, a little bit of front yard and backyard. Sorry, I'm talking a lot. I don't mean to just focus on this. What I'm saying. The exterior units, the 2 end units, have an exterior property boundary for the project. But when you divide that center unit out from the other 2 units, those are interior property lines because they're interior to the development. They are still fee simple property lines after that person or after the unit is sold. So they drive a setback for the driveway, just like an exterior property line. Right now, there's no distinction between an interior versus an exterior property line. It's simply a property line.
Are you okay with that change? I know obviously it was brought up after the fact. Are you in disagreement with having that in the code or not?
I can tell you we're in litigation in federal court right now on it, so that's about all I can say about that right now. Please.
I'd like to address this issue because
Denise, I'm sorry, you need to start.
I'm sorry.
Name.
Denise May, and I'm with Mark Spray and your city attorney's office. And I want to address this just because I am the one who went to the planning commission for all of this. Bill Mann did not direct the planning commission in any way. I did. We received a communication in the city attorney's office and in planning and building after their first consideration of this, asking whether the land development text code amendments had been properly approved. So I reviewed your tape based on that communication. In reviewing that tape, it brought to light that the vote was confusing, and I've been working with the planning commission on coming up with their rules of order and some rules of procedure on how they can do their motions, because it was not clear that a motion was made on the actual text amendments before amendments were thrown on the floor and a vote was taken on that. So we came back to revisit it for those reasons. Also, when listening to that tape, it also became clear that the text amendments that you're talking about, and specifically into the interior lot lines, was written on a piece of paper and handed from a member of the public on that evening at the second public hearing for these text amendments. Your code speaks specifically to how text amendments to your code can be made. Chapter 34 lays out the requirements. And it says, first of all, the purpose and intent of changes to your land development text code are not intended to relieve any particular hardship, nor to confer a special privilege or right on any person. That being said, how do you initiate the process? It can be initiated in one of four ways. City Council can initiate it. The Planning Commission can initiate it. The Planning and Development Director, or an owner or another person having a contractual interest in the property affected of the proposed amendment, or their agent. In this case, what you had was an original application made by your planning director on all of these text codes that he spent many months and 3 public hearings doing. In all 4 of these cases, an application has to be made and sent to your planning staff, because they are your professional planning staff, and they're supposed to look at what the impact is, whether they're in compliance with your comp plan, what the impact is on the development overall and to your residential, because the changes you're talking about impact all zoning districts. So you want your professional staff, you pay them for that review, that's what they're supposed to do. In this case, this was handed with the literal language written out to the Planning Commission on that night, after public comment. It's added as an amendment after public comment is closed, at the vote time. So it didn't go through your application process, and it was not publicly vetted. My advice to the Planning Commission was to have that particular applicant go make, that particular interested party, go make an application as is required by your code. And that was my advice, not Bill Nance.
So what about, Bill, is that an issue that gives you heartburn? Like if we tabled this back to the Planning Commission to discuss this topic on their own, is that a problem?
I'm going to still remind you that nobody made an application, so it hasn't gone through. You haven't followed your code in that regard, and so that's my issue with it. And so
That nobody made an application on this particular issue, so the Planning Commission can't change the code unless somebody applies to change it?
it can be done in one of the 4 ways I mentioned.
Which
and
means
in all of those, an application has to be made.
So Mr. Mann could make that suggestion?
He can make that application, yes, and he would have vetted it, but he had not.
So that's what I'm asking now. Have you had an opportunity to look at that? Do you have a problem with it? Or would you be okay with this going back and you adding that amendment in after reviewing it? Or is it something that you don't think we should add?
It's under current litigation, and I'd like for that path to go forward without having to try to circumvent it in the midst of litigation and make that decision prior to its sequel.
Why would we spend money on litigation fighting over whether something's included in our code or should be included in our code if you can address it and make it go away?
It's based on a prior interpretation that's already been applicable to a lot of several, if not more than several projects. I don't know if I have a problem with it or not. It just came up to me at that meeting. Obviously, my interpretation of the code is that those variances are required.
I'm not denying that. I'm saying, what about changing the code? We're proposing this huge code change.
Right.
What is the problem? Have we looked into whether we have a problem with that and making that a part of this code change?
That's just it. We haven't had that opportunity to do that because that's when it got brought up. Normally, it would have been brought up, or if it was part of the staff application, if there was any public comment, public heartburn on it, public support of it, we would have gotten that at the public hearing. It wasn't done at the public hearing, so after the public hearing. The other three amendments that Ms. Wilson correctly forwarded as the Planning Commission's recommended tweaks or changes to those amendments, each one of those dealt with a specific amendment that was brought up by staff. This one just was not. It was just an additional amendment for consideration while they were deliberating the batch of application or the batch of amendments that staff had brought for their consideration.
Okay. Thank
It's the procedure if anything else, but no, I do agree that I didn't have the opportunity. And at the time, if I was asked at the meeting, I would have said, well, I need time to look at it and see what the implications are.
Ms. Wilson?
There's a lot of good positive changes, I think, in this code, but there's a couple of things. Maybe it didn't go far enough, that one, in some cases. And going to section 34-283, that a variance may not be requested for release from maximum building height, residential density, or minimum lot area requirements. Is that Planning Commission and Board of Adjustment and all the boards, if they
One of the notes that I had under that amendment, that is nothing that's not in the code now. It's just a reiteration in a very key place in the code. So if people are looking for variances, it's another reminder you can't get variance. That you can already not get variances for those things. It's a restatement of policy that exists elsewhere in the code. It's just, if it's repetitive, it's repetitive, but it just tells people when they're looking at that criteria, oh, as if nothing else, in parentheses, as a reminder, you can't get variances for building height, density, and whatever the other one was. It's not a new regulation.
Well, the lot coverage issue seems to come up quite a bit, and it always seems to be that they grant lot coverage up to 49% almost automatically.
Okay, this does not say lot coverage, it's minimum lot area.
Lot area,
So
okay.
the minimum lot area is dictated by a zoning district, which is also reinforced by the comprehensive plan zoning district densities. That's what you cannot request. If you're in an RS2 district and the minimum lot size is 7,500 square feet, if you don't have 15,000 square feet, you can't divide it into two lots. Follow me? You can't ask for, well, I'd like a reduction in lot area so I could divide it into two. That's just not something you can do in the code. The code's not set up for that now. This is a reiteration of existing policy elsewhere in the code. It's not a new regulation at all.
Okay, there's another issue that is not addressed here, but you just touched on it. There's a lot of lots, residential RS1 lots, I think, down in the South Jacks Beach area. I've sold a couple of them, being in the real estate business recently. And it says that for single family minimum lot area has to be 10,000 square feet.
Right.
Well, those houses have been there for years and years and years and years, and they're not 10,000 square feet. One, most recent one was like 77 by 84. You're going to have a variance of some kind to even rebuild the house there.
That tends to be the justification proposed by applicants when they come in for variances. That's their hardship, is that it doesn't meet the lot of record requirement, or the lot size for the zoning district. The zoning code does apply, or does provide, for non-conforming lots of record. If you own a lot of record as it was platted before the code was created, if it's under those standards, but it's still zoned that, if it was a lot of record, you'd have development rights per that zoning district. You're exempt from lot area and lot width, but you have to meet all the dimensional standards. So when you come in with a smaller lot like that, the board will say, well, what's your hardship? Well, the district requires a 10,000 square foot lot. I only have a 7,500 square foot lot. So if my lot was 10,000 square feet, I get 3,500 square feet. Proportionally, I would like X. And that tends to be the typical argument for people coming before the board for variances. But you just can't get a reduction. You can't ask for a reduction in lot area. If you have an existing lot that's already substandard, that's fine. There are provisions for that. You just can't create a substandard lot. Does that make sense?
Well, but a lot of these have been in existence and now they're selling. And
Right.
so this new buyer cannot tear down and rebuild.
No, you can, but you're exempt because you have that lot of record. If it's a 70, and the classic example, the classic lot in this city is 50 by 125. It's a 6,250 square foot lot. Well, if you look at our zoning map, that typical lot size exists all over the city, regardless of the zoning district. But in the, I think it was the 80s is when the current district lot size standards came up. It made, right across the boards, a lot of lots in the city non-conforming per their zoning standards. So going forward, that's why there's a steady flow of variance applications going through the Board of Adjustment. And it's slowed down a little bit lately, but it's still there. That meeting, the Board of Adjustment rarely does not have a meeting for lack of agenda, whereas the Planning Commission sometimes does.
Let's say that person that has the house, they've got the right, because they don't have a 10,000 square foot house, but then they sell the property, then the new buyer, they don't have that right because they bought it after the.
No, but the lot was not changed in size. It was a non-conforming lot of record. If the lot was created in 1940 as a 60 or 50 by 125 foot lot, it carries forward as a legal non-conforming lot of record.
Even with the new buyer?
Oh, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. You'd be writing a lot of checks trying to buy a lot of property for takings if that were the case.
Another question on section 34-999E5.
Well, I don't think we go up that high. 339?
334. I know, not section 34-999 about add websites and social media to the list of prohibited locations where home occupations can advertise their home addresses reflective of current technologies.
Right.
Can you explain that?
Well, the old standards for home occupations were that you couldn't use your address in, I think it was in the phone book and in the newspaper, because back when that part of the code was written, those were the primary forms of media advertisement. Now we're just expanding it to social media because a lot of people advertise their businesses through those types of venues. And if the intent of the regulation is, that's fine, identify your business, identify your phone number, identify a PO box, but if one of the standards for a home occupation is that you don't want residential traffic, or we don't have residential traffic, we don't have customer traffic going to your residence, then we're trying to add the prohibition of advertising your residential address in any form of advertising, and today that happens to include social media. In fact, in a large part, it includes social media. So we're just trying to, keep up current.
So would website and social media people even have traffic coming to their house? Usually they go to the customer. So.
Well, it depends on what the business is. I mean, if it's April and you do bookkeeping and you're doing people's tax returns, I understand.
This is websites and social media though. Specifically addresses that, to add that to it, to home occupations.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. That's what we're saying, is that we don't want you to be able to put your personal address in association with your business on an ad that's showing up in social media. Does that make sense? If it's a home occupation, not if it's a business anywhere else in the city, just if it's an occupation at your
The home
house.
occupation, you said that the intent is not to have customers and
Right.
a commercial use of the
Right.
residential property, but most website designers they're working out of their house or social web media. They're not going to be having customers come to them anyway. They're usually going to. And does that really need to be added in? That's my question.
That was a suggestion. I mean, if you feel differently, that's something you can make a recommendation on. But most of the people I know that have applied for home occupations have a business mailbox that, there's one of the, I don't know if it's the UPS, one of the stores in the Home Depot Shopping Center, you can get mailboxes there. And a lot of people, that's how they do that. Even before this regulation, this was literally just to expand the places that we don't want you advertising your home address in association with your business.
It's not that the occupation is a web design occupation, it's you can't advertise on your website.
I understand that.
Okay.
I understand that. But still, if the intent is to have people not, having the home as a place of business where people are coming and going,
Right.
that would not apply necessarily, like other businesses, a lot of other businesses that it would apply. I'm just questioning the need to add those two things to it, but I don't have a big problem with it. So,
I understand.
because even if they have a PO box, they're going to tell the people where they are anyway, or that they need to come and drop something off, or whatever.
But I understand what you're saying, but that's exactly what the intent of the existing regulation as it is now is to curtail, as it is going forward, to try to expand it to social media advertising outlets. I understood. I think we understand.
Okay, and again, a lot of these changes are good, thank you, and the reduction from 6 to 4 townhomes, I think it's a good thing too, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. And now we're on Ms. Hoffman.
On 34-21E1, the appeals process goes from the Board of Adjustment to the Circuit Court of Duval County, and that seems like a big leap, and I'm just wondering what the jurisdiction the Circuit Court of Duval County would have on an appeal from Planning Commission.
They would, if somebody loses on local appeal, loses before the Board of Adjustment, that would be the next stop, would be the Circuit Court.
But it says instead of the Board of Appeal.
Yes, ma'am. Well, that is because a lot of the issues that are brought to the Board of Appeals, the Board of Adjustment.
Board of Adjustment.
That's a lay board. I drafted that really to get them off the spot because they're put in a very uncomfortable situation for an appeal, for instance, of director interpretation for issues that they've been brought before them for interpretation for the last 2 years. Without question, they understand the standard, they understand how it's being applied. It puts them in a very awkward position to hear testimony from the director who's presenting the agenda and whoever the complainant is, when they're looking back at me, they're like, how should we answer? How should we answer? I'm trying to get them out of that difficult position when after their decision, the next stop would be the court anyway.
Why wouldn't you put another internal, why wouldn't it be to the city council or to?
That's open or to the special magistrate. If that's a
I mean, I feel like there's more stops along the way before it would go to court.
Actually, in this case, no, there wouldn't be. Right now.
Or at least one stop before they would go to court.
You're right. And I was just recommending that it not be the Board of Adjustment. If y'all think it would be prudent to go to the special magistrate at the local level before it went to court, that may be something you want to consider.
I would certainly consider some level. I can understand your concern with it going to the Board of Adjustment, but
That's purely what that was. I mean, that was that was just my idea at the time.
I get that, but I think going directly to Court of Appeals versus some other internal entity, but that's just one example. I agree with a lot of what's in here. Substantively, I only have a few issues, but procedurally, I'm really concerned. And there was actually one other meeting before the August 27th meeting on July 23rd. I think it was the day that the Planning Commission had a training. So I sat in on it, and then I sat in on the meeting to follow it. And that was the meeting where in the Planning Commission, this was all laid out for the first time, and there was a motion made to accept it and no second. So we couldn't get a second on the Planning Commission. And I think it was because some Planning Commission members were still really unsure of their positions on things. Then on August 27th, it got a 3-2 vote. There were some procedural errors. They went back on October 22nd and still only got a 3-2 vote. The fact that there's been so many questions up on this dais and the fact that we haven't had a full review of this since 2001, anyone born that year is going into college now, and I think it's probably time to take a more holistic approach to the Land Development Code versus just piecemealing this. And a lot of these, and you admitted a lot of these are being considered because, some of them are just tweaks and things that have already been put into practice, but some of them are litigation related. And I think that that's certainly one reason to make adjustments to our code, but there's plenty more. And I think Mr. Buck brought up the lot coverage variances that happen. That's come up more and more, even among members of this council. So I think that this is all well and good, and I know you've put months and months of work into it. We have, I think, 2 new planning commission members. We're about to have 3 new council members. We're going to have a new city manager in a few months. I think the timing is right to pull this thing apart and put it back together. And I think I'm not comfortable. I'm not going to vote yes on this. I think it's time to stop piecemealing it and really get this land development code where we want it. And that's all of us, staff, citizens, council members, planning commission. We all need to be part of it.
So understand, if you're talking about a holistic level, looking out from the distance on it, you might want to use an outside source for it.
I would support that.
Thank you, Ms. Hoffman. Mr. Buck?
Yeah, I'd like to give a little history lesson. J.S. Buck and B.C. Buck developed in the 1920s, which would be recorded in the Historical Society, where they plotted all of the South Beach area with 50-foot lots. And with the reasoning being, this was before the Depression, that people would be coming out on the train and wanting to build little houses and spend the summer here. And then immediately after the war, my dad developed Sir Park between 13th North and Seagate, and Shad developed right behind it. All of those are 50-foot lots. I think my dad had some 125-foot deep. But anyhow, the whole essence to what I'm saying is, these were plotted from the 20s. And then after the war, when you built 1,000 to 1,100 square feet, or maybe even less, and we're still at 35 foot and 35 lot coverage, and not to take that up at this time, to me, is just crazy to make that 44 feet. When this goes back the 20s and right after the war, and when houses were different and 35 foot was, percentage was plenty, it just makes no sense for this not to be part of this. Just makes no sense.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Doran?
And if I'm allowed to make, I don't know if we can make any kind of amendments at this time or not, but it should be in there.
You can make a motion.
I want to make a motion that we change the current lot coverage from 35% to 44% to meet current day conditions.
Got a motion on the floor, is there a second?
Second.
Got a motion and a second, so for discussion?
May I ask for a clarification, sir? Is this for single-family homes and two-family dwellings?
Single-family home.
Okay, sorry, I'm not trying to interrupt your process. Right now, the 35% lot coverage regulation applies to single-family dwellings and two-family dwellings. That's it. So if you wanted to apply to both, I just need to know enough direction.
Well, that would probably be the proper thing to do.
Okay.
So my motion then is amended to single and
two-family.
Yeah.
Okay, motion's amended to single and two-family. Is there still a second, Mr. Gordon?
Yes.
Okay. Open for discussion, Mr. Vogelsang?
I'm gonna make a motion, even if this passes, to table this and to outsource it, just like we discussed, just like we did with our sign code. It shouldn't be Mr. Mann going through our land development code. That's not something that he should be doing, just like Chief Pat Dooley shouldn't be redoing a bunch of the codes that he redoes. It should be professionally done. We should go through the entire thing. Because obviously, like what you talk about, Lee, there's one thing, but everybody probably has input. Obviously, developers have input, everybody has input, but if we're dealing with something that's this old, why don't we go through the entire thing? So after this vote, my intention is to table it with the idea of redoing the whole thing.
Well, my problem with that, this goes back to 2004, that we've been working on this that long. Now we're gonna table it again. We keep tabling it. I just can't buy it. I hope the council will consider it.
Procedurally, does it not have to be public notice that we're going to make that new motion?
I have to defer to the attorney.
I will just remind the council that your land development code has major implications for land use in your city and property rights. It does require heavy public vetting and public hearing. And depending on exactly what you're impacting, Chapter 163 of the Florida statutes requires different noticing for different types of impacts, which is why I don't recommend doing one big rollover. Certain of these need to be vetted separately because they impact larger parcels or smaller parcels, which is why your Chapter 34, even if this council wants to initiate a land development code text change, initiates it through an application process so that it does get the proper review for compliance with your comprehensive plan. Because remember, this is the big Bible that you have to absolutely comply with.
Denise, just for clarification, that includes Mr. Buck's recent motion.
That's correct.
Okay.
And anything that affects a parcel of land needs that analysis. It's really important. And that's why the other one, it wasn't that I think that Mr. Mann had any problem with the proposed amendment at the Planning Commission. It was literally that it just had not been vetted through your process. And that's for your protection. That is so that, because the state, first of all, tells you you've got to have a comp plan. You must. That's your Bible. You must adhere to it. So your staff is supposed to take these and look and see how it impacts. Does it comply with all the comp plans? You can make a comp plan change too, but that also requires its own separate public process and state approvals. So it's a very impassioned and in-depth, and so you don't usually log roll these all into one big thing. You really don't, because anywhere you're impacting intensity and density of use, and I would tell you one of these here tonight is impacting intensity and density of use on a particular parcel of land. The variance for internal lot lines and 5 feet off, again, that's impacting the use of private property. So I know that you all have seen Bert Harris actions. You do know that it just sets you up for them. So the proper method is to properly have them applied for, vetted through your comp plan and your professional staff on a one-by-one basis. Some of the text amendments where you're just adding website, this sort of stuff, this is not what I'm talking about. What I am talking about is where you're talking about lot coverage, you're talking about variances to internal lot lines, or you're talking about intensity or density of use on a potential piece of property. Those are very important. The other just legalese thing I want to remind is we haven't heard any ex parte. And so before you close it out, if you would just give any ex parte communications you may have.
I didn't get the, there's two types of public hearings that I get data for, and I didn't get. Let me ask a question while we're jotting this down. Between you and I and Kirk, we ought to be looking at the paperwork for it. Have you ever seen the wholesale changing of this type of process that Mr. Volkswagen has suggested, that we bring somebody come in and take an outsider's look?
Yes.
Okay.
There are professional, you're going to need a professional planner, somebody who has the same credentials as Mr. Mann, but probably has more time. Mr. Mann has to keep up with your daily workflow. He's got permits coming in, he's got regulations. If you're wanting a more comprehensive look, I've seen it done. A lot of it gets done when you do your 11-year year amendments to your comprehensive plan, because you're looking at it from the big picture down to the small. But that's not to prevent you from doing a major comprehensive review right now by a professional planner who would look at, but you would probably want to separate those out to see where you're impacting private property use, that they get properly vetted through planning commission, lots of public input, and proper public notice. But I don't know where you are in your comprehensive plan year process. Bill probably knows. When the last time an ear amendment was done?
Opted out of this last cycle. No, we opted out.
Opted out of the last one.
There were some changes that we needed to do.
So, yeah. I know that my prior city is currently in the process of this cycle's ear amendments, and so they look at it from the top down, and we want to see. If there's still nothing there, then maybe you don't need to go through that. It is a year-long process to go through and look at everything. You really have to look at what your goals and objectives are, your policies underneath that, and they all have to adhere, because every court battle you go into, including the litigation he refers to, that's what the judge is looking at. That's what the lawyers are pointing out. What does your comp plan say? What are the goals and objectives? Where are your land development regulations in compliance with those comp plan objectives? And because that's what the battle comes down to, lawyers can always fight about what is or is not in compliance with a comp plan. But you want to do it procedurally such that your due process is always given, people have plenty of opportunity, and you don't end up in court on a due process issue.
Point of procedure, you're saying this is a quasi-judicial proceeding?
Right now, you're in quasi-legislative. This is
Okay.
quasi-legislative, but
Just-
you're impacting land use.
Okay, but just so you know, there's, from our perspective and what we've done, at least in the last 6 years, is it's either quasi-judicial or just an open public hearing. And I don't have a package for quasi-judicial, so I don't have the,
You're not in a judicial because you're not applying.
okay.
You're in legislative,
But,
which means you're making policy.
okay, but we'd still do the ex parte?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, this wasn't very well organized.
Can I make a point of order? We still have an amendment on the floor that hasn't been
Yes.
voted on.
Well, I think it's been negated by the attorney who said that it can't be done.
Well, you can vote on what you've got before you. It has been publicly vetted. It has gone through public process. It has
I'm
come through-
talking about Mr. Bucks.
Mr. Bucks, it probably needs to be vetted properly through chapter
Right,
34.
so, I mean,
That's correct.
It's a good procedure, you can withdraw it, but we have to
What do you-
Based on what she's saying, I don't think I have any alternative but to withdraw.
Okay, so, motion's withdrawn. Okay, well, we'll keep going with the, Mr. Doherty's next on with you.
Yeah, it's just, sorry, right up there.
I don't know if you wanted to speak to him or.
Probably Bill in a minute, he needs to take a breather. But you mentioned potential litigation. Having read over this yourself, I mean, there are some things that are subtle, and there's some things that are major when it comes to property rights. And is there anything in this, and something that jumps out at me from the get-go was the 4 to 6 as far as townhomes. Is there anything that, do you think that something like that has potential to land as a court, or has that been given the proper procedural due diligence and process?
In the fact that this one went through 3 public hearings at your planning commission and came up through the proper process. It was vetted by Bill Mann.
Yeah.
It was heard 3 times in public hearings with opportunity for public comment. And it's going to be here 2 times.
Right.
I mean, tonight's not the only night. You have yet another public hearing before you take any final action.
Yeah.
It's properly vetted, and you've had an opportunity to hear from people.
Right. Well, Bill, I feel your pain because, we hear a lot of things from our residents regarding what they see as the overdevelopment of residential neighborhoods, usually by means of variance, where people put, I have no problem with somebody wanting to remodel their home or make their house slightly bigger, but what I think the general pattern has been over the past few years is let's stick as much as we can on a lot. And that, while I understand that people want to live here, I also understand that our infrastructure can support overdevelopment. So I assume that this is a step in the right direction for helping us get some clarity on the direction that we're going to go as far as the future development of the residential areas of our city. There are some things that pertain to the central business district. I noticed the storefronts, or the use for mixed use going from 2 to 3. Is that for shopping centers, or what does that particularly address?
That proposed change was merely a change to the definition of a shopping center, which currently in the code, and I'm paraphrasing, but currently it requires a minimum of 2 businesses sharing a common off-street parking lot, whether they're owned by the same owner or not. That meets the definition of a shopping center today. The staff proposal was just to change that to a minimum of 3 businesses sharing a common off-street parking lot. Then you would be afforded the rights of a shopping center. The key thing is the parking requirement.
Okay. And so that's because it does. I'm sure you've spent hours on this in days and weeks, but it does deal with quite a lot of different aspects of development in our city. Do you think that this is going to make your job or the board's jobs any easier when it comes to dealing with day-to-day business?
I think a lot of the amendments that are in there are for clarification purposes. For instance, the one that I kept saying was a that was what you can't ask for variances for. It's just simply putting in another section of code so you don't have to look back. I think it adds some clarity to the code. Based on some discussions I've had with attorneys is why I put in clarification saying, look, if it's not clear to 1 or 2 people, maybe I still disagree with you. But when I hear it about 3 or 4 times from different venues, I'm like, well, maybe we ought to put a clarification in there. I mean, I've had the luxury of being able to interpret the code, or under Mr. Lindorf, under his interpretation of the code, a fairly consistent interpretation. But that being said, if I get 3 or 4 or 5 people saying, hey, it could be a little clearer, that's not how I get it, then I'll concede and say, yeah, maybe we'll put some of that clarification in there.
Well, so in your professional opinion, because I know there was some talk about a professional planner, which you are, so in your professional opinion, do you think you could benefit from having another set of eyes on our land development code?
I don't think it can hurt at all having an outside objective viewpoint, but one thing I will tell you, and I'll remind everybody in the audience for that matter, this city is 90-95% built out. You're not going to do radical changes to our code, or if you do propose radical changes to a code, they're not going to have an overwhelmingly dramatic effect because the city's not going to wholesale redevelop overnight. So that's why, and I'm not trying to discount anything, any of the comments that were said, but there's only a certain amount of things. If we had an outside consultant look at the code, I think their primary list that they came up with at the end would be some areas of internal conflict, some areas that may need more clarification. I don't know if they're going to go forward because they don't have our local vernacular to make comments. I don't know if they would have come up with, well, why don't we make the maximum, instead of 6-unit townhouses in RM1, why don't we make it 4? And I just proposed that for massing. I don't know if you're going to get that kind of color in their audit of our code. But you will find stuff that I may not have known that was internally conflicted because I read the code a lot, but I know the code a lot too.
So in your opinion as well, you say we're 95% built out. I mean, is our infrastructure, how critical is that? Have we maxed our infrastructure out with 95%?
Well,
or is it still 5%?
we've got another ordinance after this, and it's to adopt our, and I don't want to hop into it, but in a lot of cases we're doing fine. But I'll tell you one reason we're doing fine is because When I got here in '94, I can't remember what the out year of the plan was, but it was the then current comprehensive plan. It was based on the city build out of 32,000 people. And like I'm saying, if I'm accurate, we're at 95, and that's, I'm just throwing this number, we're above 90% built out. I think anybody can go look at the aerials outside my office and see we're pretty much built out. Well, we got 23,000 people here now. I don't see going from 23 to 32 just by allowable intensification in different districts, because we're pretty much built. You're going to replace a single-family house with a single-family house. In a lot of cases in the older beach redevelopment, we're replacing non-conforming old beach houses that got turned into 4 apartments. Well, by our current code, they only allow 2 or 3, so we're dropping the density. So I don't know if there's a point I'm making. I don't know if we'll get to that 32,000, but the infrastructure, our water wells, which we'll find out, I heard about in a minute, our sewage treatment plant, they were all built out with the assumption that we were going to be generating solid waste from 32,000 people, and we were going to need drinking water for 32,000 people. The fact is, we're not there. So in terms of level of service, I think our infrastructure is fine. It's really a discussion with Public Works about the pipes
What's
and
the density? And, yeah, maybe I worded my question wrong. Yeah, I know we have the potential to handle that amount of people. When I mentioned infrastructure, I think I was more alluding to traffic patterns and the stress on the roads. I've noticed in the last 15, 20 years that traffic has increased. I don't know if more people have cars now, or if more people living out here. I'm assuming more people living here. And one thing I do hear a lot, and I'm sure you do when you sit on these boards, is that there are residents concerned about what they see as the overdevelopment of certain neighborhoods. You're saying there's still room for 5% growth. Is that across the board, or is it in certain particular areas of the city?
First off, that's a general typification just by me looking at the aerial photograph and seeing that we've got very few developable lots left. We may be over 95%, but I wouldn't try. I can't pigeonhole it to say this is the amount of vacant land or this is the amount of additional yield we'll get from redevelopment. I'm just saying, generally speaking, we're above the 90%. I'm just, like I said, just look at the aerial outside my office. We're pretty much built out. Yeah.
Well, thank you, and I like the shirt you're wearing. It's a good advertisement for the city. All right, thanks.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Thompson, do you have a revisit?
No, sir.
Okay. Let's see. Ms. Wilson, revisit?
Yes, thank you. In listening to all the comments, I haven't heard anybody that's been adamantly opposed to any of these things in here. So I think what I'm hearing is that we think it doesn't go far enough in revising our land development code. But because of the fact that a lot of these things in here are good things that we could implement right away and proceed on with, even if we pass this tonight, it does not preclude us from going into a comprehensive redevelopment land code process if we choose to do so. So my recommendation is to go ahead and approve this tonight, get started with what's in here, and then we can also go back and revisit if we need to. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hoffman.
I just want to disagree with that. I think there's enough items in here that nothing is dramatic or crucial. And to Ms. May's comment, even if we do have an outside review, I don't think anybody's expecting anything, I don't remember the word you used, but super dramatic to come from it. But it's things like this, that outside eyes, that, I mean, if you look at Bill's land development code, it's like a cookbook that it opens up to his favorite recipe when, he knows it back and forth, but he's also really close to it. And I just think there's enough confusion and concern in this here and on the Planning Commission that we need to, I think it's worthwhile to take all of these things and put them on the list that will potentially be, greater than this. And some of them are going to be small, some of them will be bigger, but I think we need to look at what does the next 18 years of our community look like. And even though we may be 95% built out, there's certainly a lot of rebuilding going on, and that's something that we should really focus on and consider going forward.
Thank you, ma'am. Any other comments? We're at a bit of a pause because of procedural issues. As you guys work, as we've all sat on the council together for a long time, quasi-judicial procedure requires a certain set of declarations and reading to the public. What our Denise is bringing up we've never done. We've never done any quasi legislative. I would assume we'd always do quasi legislative. But I've asked the city manager to meet with the attorney to make sure that if we're gonna make this vote, let's make sure we've read all the appropriate and pledged all our activities. So with that being said, I'm gonna recommend a 5-minute recess to give everybody an opportunity to use the facility. Anybody have an objection? Okay, 5-minute recess. We'll resume at 9:10.
Giving birth.
Stretch. Tomorrow, yeah. I know, I understand, I'm more sick because the kids, last minute change, so I was like, well, I'm gonna use my day off Tuesday. So, Trey will be signing. Yeah, I do know. I got a friend told me a picture of my wall, sign it, put out on Facebook.
Downside is you get some much trouble.
That would be a bigger office. I just got a bigger office. I got one wall is all this.
Oh, I'm at put a sign.
Yeah, I used to look at the back of those, so I'm happy to have it.
Never been to. I had a friend that lived in Fine Mile, and they're still not here. You know?
Some of them are.
No, you know, no.
I know.
You talk about the outside, talk about the outside, they're trying to. No, you're not running for office. I'm an outsider. No, I'm talking about people that don't know the news, that don't know what's going on. I mean,
That's right.
Politics. That's why I don't run, because I'm not. There you go. But I think we need a little bit more of that. Yeah.
I'll have the ex parte language in just a second. But as a point of order, Mr. Boatsing, I think you had two motions on the floor. One was to bring outside.
I didn't make a
And then-
motion, I just did that under discussion under Lee's motion.
Okay.
So that was just discussion on whether we'd want to consider tabling it.
Okay, thank you. Just for point of clarification. That's it. Okay. Madam Attorney, I'll let you just explain what's going on.
Just final point of clarification on quasi judicial versus quasi legislative. Again, it comes from my prior life in city work, and having done this for a while, we do ex parte disclosures, even at legislative hearings. We do that just so that there is transparency, so that everyone knows who's been contacted or lobbied for a particular piece of legislation. It's standard practice in the law. It should be done before the proposition is voted on, at a minimum, but we recommended it both hearings.
Thank you, and also I attribute this to because of the change in leadership, and we've got Susan Early would normally be there, George Forbes would normally be here, the packages would be put together, everybody knew exactly what we were doing, and this is just a little bit of a growth itch, so.
I apologize.
That's okay, that's okay. I just wanted to make sure too that the public understood that when we do that thing, when we open public hearings, when we do ex parte communications, there's very specific statements that have to be read into the record, and that's why the pause was there, and that's why we got these documents here. So I'm going to go on with ex parte unless you have anything else.
I have nothing else.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Before requesting, well, we've already requested the motion, but before we vote on this motion, beginning with myself, each member is requested to indicate for the record the names of persons and substance of any ex parte communication regarding this application. An ex parte communication refers to any meeting or discussion with a person or citizen who may have an interest in this decision which occurred outside of the public hearing process. And I will announce that I have had no ex parte communications with anyone, and I'm going to ask each of the council members, and we'll start down at the center with Mr. Vogelsang.
We received a couple of emails. I don't have access to those, but that would be the ex parte communication. I think that was sent to our Jack's Beach, whether they were for or against the 4-unit townhomes. Is that?
Oh, today, right? The ones that were today. That was on contact forms?
Yes.
I don't think you need to declare that what comes in on a contact form unless you responded.
No.
Okay.
Okay.
Probably had none. I had one, and I did respond to it, that I would certainly give, hear everything the applicant had to say.
Can you tell us who it was that you?
Yeah, it was Ken Storm, S-T-O-R-M.
Okay, thank you, sir.
I have none other than an email.
Okay.
Nothing known.
That's all.
I spoke with a few residents, I think probably after the July 23rd meeting, but it was informally outside of this meeting room. And I spoke with Zach Miller this morning about my question that I asked regarding a typical appeals process and what other municipalities do in that case.
Okay. All right, so we've done the ex parte. It seems like we've exhausted the discussion, and now the motion is on the table for vote. Does anybody need to hear a motion? That's a long motion. Okay, Madam Clerk, can we get a roll call, please?
Councilmember Thomason?
Yes.
Councilmember Vogelsang?
No.
Councilmember Wilson?
Yes.
Councilmember Buck?
No.
Councilmember Doherty?
No.
Councilmember Hoffman?
No.
Mayor Latham?
No. And moving on to Madam Clerk, please read ordinance number 2018-8113, first reading, public hearing by title only, please.
An ordinance of the City of Jacksonville Beach, Florida, adopting amendments to the Jacksonville Beach 2030 Comprehensive Plan for the purpose of adopting the 10-year water supply facilities work plan in order to comply with Chapter 163.3177, Section 6C3, Florida statutes, amending the potable water sub-element, conservation element, and intergovernmental coordination element of the comprehensive plan, establishing severability and providing an effective date.
I make a motion that we adopt ordinance number 2018-8113, adopting text amendments to the Jacksonville Beach 2030 Comprehensive Plan as related to the required water supply facilities work plan.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Ms. Nelson.
This ordinance adopts text amendments to the Jacksonville Beach 2030 Comprehensive Plan to add and update policies for and adopt by reference the city's water supply facilities work plan. I do want to point out that there is a Scrivener's error in the ordinance itself. On page 1, the third whereas, first sentence says, the city initiated an amendment to the 2030 Comprehensive Plan in order to incorporate the 10-year water supply facilities work plan by reference in the comprehensive plan. So the word "in" needs to be removed.
Scrivener, other than the Scrivener error, any other
No,
comments?
I have no other comments.
Okay. Council, any comments or questions? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Councilmember Vogelsang?
Yes.
Councilmember Wilson?
Yes.
Councilmember Buck?
Yeah.
Councilmember Doherty?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoffman?
Yes.
Councilmember Thomason?
Yes.
Mayor Latham?
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, this meeting is adjourned. Have a great night.